This episode of Reality Escape Pod is brought to you by Morty, Buzzshot, Cogs by Clockwork Dog, and our Patreon backers. Today, we're sharing one of our Patreon exclusive bonus aftershows featuring Curtis Ratliff and Derek Townsley, the brilliant and hardworking minds behind Escape Ventures in Florida. They tell us a slightly gross story about the misadventures of a water jug. We also talk about designing a new style of game store, how to improve game flow, and they also give me a quick primer on why the Bucky's convenience stores are the greatest thing ever. The best way to support Reality Escape Pod is by becoming a patron at patreon.com/roomescapeartist. For only $5 a month, you'll get access to our bonus after show, where we continue the conversation with our guests, who are all inspiring creators and leaders in the escape room and immersive gaming industry.
Welcome to the Reality Escape Pod bonus show. Today, PG and I are joined by our episode guests, Derek and Curtis from the Escape Ventures in Orlando. Welcome, everybody.
Thanks for having us. So excited.
So we usually don't have interview questions for the bonus episode. We occasionally put like an agenda down for things we want to talk about from the main episode or any questions we didn't get to. And I just want to tell all of our listeners that the number one item on this agenda today is urine story. Is what David has put down as the number one bullet point.
Yes. At the end of the main episode, Curtis told a story about their doggo in their set, indicating that it felt like a proper outdoor space that could be peed on. And Derek said that it turns out there are other urine stories related to your escape room experience. Proceed.
Yes. Great little startup there. I actually think CJ can take this over better because it was our last day at the escape room location that this happened, and it was just a great send-off. It really was. Yes. So this was my last day working at there as a regular old game host before I went off and opened my own big old escape room. And I had a lovely group. In this game, there was a bottle in the corner, a big glass tub, and you had to find access to more water in the game to fill it so a key would float to the top. Well, they got the key, and to preface this, sorry to cut you off, there is an understanding as a business owner that sometimes you gotta make the sale. And so this location is right next to a bar, some drinks may have been...
Someone was fully loaded.
They seemed sober at the beginning. Yes. They seemed sober enough. So it was apparent that they weren't fully sober, and that transitioned to your story. It's hard to exactly remember when it happened, but I do know that in this one part of the room, there's a blind spot. Of course, this one part of the room. So when you see people over there, you presume they're working on the puzzle. Okay, well, they didn't take their pants off. I didn't see any guest booty on the cameras. But they got the key, and game host me said, cool, they found all the water bottles. They're moving on. I'm going to reset, head out, say my goodbyes. But it was funny because you walked in to do the reset and realized that some things were still locked. I was getting there, don't worry. They got out. We took a picture in the room. They all were super happy, walked them out the front, locked the doors, and I start resetting, and I pick up one of the water tubs, and it was warm. It was really warm.
Oh, no.
Oh, no, indeed. So I picked it up, and in my head, I'm like, there's no way. I'm bare-skinned right now. I'm like, there's no way. So I walk over to the tub, and not only are all the bottles full, it was like 3 of them, I think. They were all full. The entire barrel was full too, and they got the key. And it was all warm, and it smelled disgusting when I got to the back corner. And I ended up staying 3 hours late on my last night there, deep cleaning the space. And I am not a big guy, okay? I'm a small boy.
Wait, I have a lot of thoughts right now. First of all, we live in a damn society. This is not okay. Second, this was your last night. You were totally within your rights to call up the owners and be like, hey, I'm out of here. By the way, the last team was a nightmare. You should come in and deal with this.
I think the unfortunate part was he was the acting manager, and we were continuing on in the industry that we always have a respect, So I think it was more so there is a duty to be done. I didn't even tell them it happened.
I respect the hell out of that, but also this sounded like a them problem at this point.
And this glass jug I'm talking about is enormous. Like it is. And little old me, I weighed 120 pounds back then. Okay, not that anymore. But back then I was 120 on a heavy day. And I lifted up this 100-pound jug full of glass, water, and I had to carry it outside, dump it out. Then I had to soap in there, clean it. It was absolute nightmare. And I just powered through it. And I said, it's my last day. It's fine. After this, no more of this.
Now that I'm going to own a business and I'm going to have respect.
It has. I'm going to make sure that guests know they can leave the room to go to the bathroom at any point. But I think going from that, it was a huge thing that anytime someone's like, you should do this kind of puzzle, we're always going to get that kind of comment. I think you should do this room. I think you should do this. We've made a very important decision to never have water in our games. There will never be water in a TEF game.
I'm very anti-water and anti-sand.
Yes.
Jonathan from Escaparian came on and said he's never doing water again. And then he put it in a major way.
Again.
Yes.
I love talking with him, though. What a great guy. But we've done sand in a game, but we always paint it and stick it to the floor so it's not movable sand. Oh, no, it's not. We're not doing like an Egyptian floor where it's like bags and bags of sand. It's all aesthetic that's stuck in place. Nothing to get your... So no water. Honestly, the water thing is because I don't want guests to think they can pee there. And in one of our newest games that will be opening next year, there is a active toilet in the game. And I'm extremely nervous about it. And I keep telling Derek I don't want it to be. It will be active during this game. We'll get into it and it's going to end up being active.
I am so curious of all the escape room owners out there who have, games with toilets in them. And there's quite a few because I have had to reach into more dirty toilets and remove fake poop than I would care to admit. So there's a lot of you out there with toilets in your escape rooms. I want to know how many of them have been peed on. I'm sure all of them have been peed on, but how often does it actually happen?
Mm-hmm. Many of the owners who have toilets in games who I have spoken to have had issues with this. I generally recommend that if you're going to have a toilet in the game, to pour resin into the bottom and really properly plug it. So at the very least, it is contained.
I think for me, it's going to be more about just securing it shut and taking everything out of it. We're going to have to return it to that for that use in the future, that it's more so just what can we do to not make it accessible? Technically, you have to have the water in there to stop the smells because it's active. Right now, you could use it as a regular toilet bathroom.
It's a working toilet that's connected to plumbing.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. So it's a little bit of a pickle that I'm going to be in as the business person of landlord got to make sure we have their stuff. We can't remove the bathroom. We don't want to seal it up. We'll call you guys when the puzzle is done and we decided what we did. We'll call you guys the moment someone pisses.
There are games that have active bathroom and, the companies make it clear this is a bathroom, go use it if you need it. Even those still have issues. I think when we had Dimitri from Paradox Project in Greece on back in season 4, I think he was telling us a story about there were a couple of urinals in the bathroom. The toilets had some urinal cakes in them. They had some blue ones and some pink ones, and people were trying to turn that into a puzzle.
Well, yeah, I guess that's it for the bathroom escapades in our escape rooms, though. Praying.
That's some good stuff. The gaming store stuff. I've probably talked about this on a bonus episode before. My first real job was off the books. I was 14. I was working illegally. I would bike to this local card shop, collectible shop, that had opened up nearby. I just really liked the place and I wanted to work and I was really trying to feed a Magic the Gathering habit. I didn't realize it when I first started. I was becoming the first employee there and the owner, he must have been no more than 20 and he had just inherited a whole bunch of money from his parents passing away. And I never got the whole story, but what I could tell was that this guy was deeply depressed and didn't really have any of the tools or knowledge or funding to actually run this business. And so at 14, I was basically just running the store on my own.
And so he turned to a 14-year-old boy.
He was literally sitting in the back playing Baldur's Gate for almost the entire run of my tenure working there. I worked there for like 4 or 5 months. Every single time he would just be in the back playing Baldur's Gate. Good game. Respect the choice. He had no idea what he was doing. And I was up front. I would like rearrange the store. Like, more people are buying this. I'm going to move this back so that they have to cross over and see other things. I was just making decisions. He was completely disconnected.
Hey, I mean, at 14, like, it seems like you were making the right decisions. I mean, you were running a business. That's pretty good.
I was just doing my best. I think he certainly could have done worse for a 14-year-old illegal employee.
It's funny because you started so young. I had literally never stepped foot inside one of those types of card game stores until like 7 years ago, well into my 30s. I'm into board games. I'm into all of that kind of nerd stuff. But maybe as a female, I just always felt really intimidated by them. When you go in, you kind of look in the back and it's bare walls. It's like half game store, but then the back half is just filled with a bunch of dudes sitting there at tables. And I always kind of thought the idea of it seemed really cool. But like I said, I just really didn't know where to start.
That's such an important point, though, because that was actually one of the first things we made a point, because my Nana, being a female, and then my best friend who's running the store also feels the exact same way. So when we were opening Geeked, it was like, how can we make sure this feels like a safe place for women? I mean, that's super important. And not just women, but everyone. Like, everyone's money is green. So if we think like that, why wouldn't you want everybody in your store?
Also, if I feel like the more girls you get in there, maybe the more guys you'll get in there too.
Well, you gotta talk about everything. But I mean, like, at the end of the day, a business needs to be accessible. And if you're losing out on a clientele, that's very important. And for us, it's so important to make sure that everyone's inclusive. And this is a space that feels inclusive and accessible. The managers, the leads on duty, like, a lot of them are female presenting. There's so much inclusivity to be had there. And also just showing, hey, we're here. We're about the cards. We're about the board games. And we want you guys to be too.
I also think that the climate has changed a lot in the past 10 years, even with like gaming and things like that. The gaming industry itself is realizing that girls like video games. Girls like board games and strategy games. And for so long, it was really catering to like boys are playing these things.
Absolutely.
And now they're realizing there's a huge market of females who want to play these games. And maybe they want to play different games, but maybe they want to also play the same ones that you guys are. And so it is really different nowadays, which I think is really cool.
It is and it isn't. I mean, it is different and it isn't different. Back in the day, Kevin Smith used to talk about comic book shops as basically only coming in 2 flavors. And I believe this is also generally true of gaming stores. You have bat caves and you have fortresses of solitude. And the bat caves are these dark, dimly lit, nerd man cave type vibe. And the fortress of solitudes are bright, well lit, clean, organized places to go. And that's basically it. Every comic book shop and game shop will fall into one of those 2 categories.
What's wrong with the brightly lit one? When you said Fortress of Solitude, I was imagining a dank dungeon, David.
No, this is Superman's Fortress of Solitude. If you're unfamiliar with it, Google it.
Oh, okay.
We got to pull up the visual research.
Yeah, Batman's place of residence versus Superman's place of residence.
Okay.
Anyways, this is the only 2 flavors that they really seem to come in. The bat caves tend to just be very imposing, kind of in clubs for a very particular type of nerd who is usually male. There's also like a lot of bad behavior that emerges from those kinds of places. The lack of inclusivity tends to lean towards, like, I remember back in the day, we used to have what was called the card shop hustle, which would be a kid would come in, open up a pack, one of the more expensive rares in the set. And one of the things, especially with Magic back in the day, and even still to this day, sometimes the cards that kids like they're not the good cards. They look really like the stuff that looks really good to a kid is the more esoteric stuff that is really good and playable to an adult and someone who's being competitive. And so you'd have two guys who would be sitting there, and one of them would be like, oh, I'm sorry you pulled that, kid, even though it's like, $40-$50 card, and like the kid wouldn't know what they were looking at. They would offer a trade for it, and then another guy would go and be like, oh yeah, that's a really good deal, you should just take that. When you don't have people who are like looking out for your customers, who are like, no, that's wrong, and telling these people, like, if you do that kind of stuff, we're going to kick you out.
Yeah.
Like that kind of stuff would go down in some stores, even the ones I wasn't working at. Like I would stop that stuff all the time, but that was like super common back in the 90s.
Well, we haven't ran into the issue at Geeked yet, fingers crossed, but we're also very like, if you look at Geeked, where do we fall?
You look very Fortress of Solitude to me. It looks very clean. It looks hyper organized. It seems warm and friendly. When I was saying in the main episode, it looked to me like you were doing it right. That's what I was meaning.
The best part is we're building all these games so fast, so the next time you bring a tour down, you can crash at Geek. There's tables, drinks.
Oh, I promise you that was not lost on me.
You guys should start running Jubenchas in there.
I don't even know what that is. What is that?
Oh.
Educate us.
So I'll go into it really quickly, but there is a People Make Games YouTube video that hit the scene like last year, David?
I would highly recommend, if you are unfamiliar with Jubencha, we'll include it in the show notes for this. You should watch the People Make Games episode because it's phenomenal, and we'll go into a level of depth we never could right now. But proceed, BG.
So I talked about this already in a previous bonus episode, but at its core, it is kind of a role-playing murder mystery game. These ones originated in China. It's a craze over there. It's this huge trend. It's kind of addicting, and I understand why now after I've played a couple that were translated into English. But it's really cool because you're taking on like a role, and you are all working collectively with your group of friends to unravel this mystery. And it's one of those things where you only get certain bits of information, and as events unfold, it starts to become more clear over time. It's really confusing. But what I think personally sets it apart from like regular murder mysteries is that I've only played two, but the two that I played had totally different mechanics. One, we were given cards slowly over time, and in another one there was a script. But the thing that really sets it apart is like there are some really taboo subjects taking place, so it's more actually like a soap opera. The plot lines are really kind of involved, and there's people are having affairs with each other. There's sometimes taboo stuff.
It's super tawdry and can get real. Like you got to be careful because taboos are cultural and they don't necessarily travel around across borders very well.
Yes, so it depends on which ones you get, but some of them it's like a bunch of people are actually dead, but you didn't realize it. But maybe there's clues you could have figured it out. So there's all these kind of like interesting things in there, but they're long. That's the thing. They take up to 4 to 5 hours to play, and there is just something a little bit kind of addicting.
Yeah, I can imagine. Our graphics lead, he is planning literally as we walked down the door today. He was like, check out this invitation I made for my birthday party that is being hosted at your house, and we're doing a murder mystery. So that definitely sounds up his alley, and I'm definitely more intrigued. I gotta check it out because I'm very.
You should definitely look into it. Just really be mindful that like you won't really know what taboos are featured in a given game until you sit down to play it. So like just be very aware of who you're playing with, because it is entirely plausible that you will find out at some point that one of the characters that one of your friends or family is playing like sexually assaulted another character who one of your friends or family is playing, and then may have also killed them. And
it's not PC. You might encounter like a lot of just a lot of stuff that's kind of not cool.
Yeah.
So I am going to put that out there. There's no trigger warnings on any of this stuff.
I watch a lot of anime. Some animes are pretty rough, so I got you. So
yeah, it's a really interesting thing. So Jubencha exploded in China and Southeast Asia in general what I'm hearing at the moment is that there's been a pretty big market retraction because it sounds like the government is cracking down on a lot of it, which is not shocking. It's a really interesting space, and there isn't really an analogy for it in the US. The closest is murder mystery, but it's more involved.
I'll definitely look into it. That sounds interesting, which I guess is kind of segues into a question I would have for you guys is you mentioned guys versus girls in the game space and how definitely it's been more appeased towards guys. When it comes to our game Bros for Life, I had a thought and I said, I wonder if we would be where we at if we did Sisters for Life sorority heist. Because what I found is I did ask guests that, and pretty much no guy would ever play that game. But girls love Bros game.
I've played a sorority heist game and had a good time with it.
There's a couple things here. So I haven't played the game, but my sense is that, it's campy and you're kind of poking fun at it a little bit. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Yes.
In a lot of ways, as a lot of 80s movies villains have taught us, frat bro is kind of like the top of the food chain, right? Mm-hmm. If you're going to punch, it's okay to punch up. Mm-hmm. And so I think that kind of helps. It's like any group that is disenfranchised in any way, it's harder to do a game where you're kind of making fun of them a little bit. So that might have been part of it.
Well, I've just always found that guys have been less likely to book a theme like that than girls. But girls have been super stoked about Bros for Life.
Let me ask you this. Of the people who are actually booking the games, I'm going to guess that the overwhelming majority of people who are booking are women, probably between 30 and 45.
Yes, our demographic. Yeah. That's every escape from our target demographic.
I think that there is actually, especially, you've now established there's this trust in your audience. I suspect that if you were to do a sequel that was a sorority heist, I think that you would have no problem selling. It would be my guess.
I think now definitely, but I'm always just curious in the beginning.
We had a good time playing the one sorority heist type game that we had played up in Quebec City. I think that it could have pushed itself a little bit harder, but I thought that it was it was really fun and really clever. The stereotypes that you're playing with a sorority, you're playing more with like cattiness, which is fun, but I think that it's harder to embody. I think the thing that is so great with Bros for Life is just talking to all sorts of folks who I would just never expect to react this way are like doing their parody version of a bro. And I think that is where a lot of the magic in that game exists. My personal opinion. I think it's a really nice game. I think it's well built. I think that the things that you have people doing in it are fun. A solid 60% of what makes that game special is the energy that a given team brings to it. And if they're not bringing that energy, when I've talked to teams that like didn't connect with it, and I was just like, hey, what was it like playing? And they were like, oh, it was an escape room. We were just playing an escape room. It was fraternity heist. You didn't embrace it. And so I think that part of the magic of that game is that the characters are so easy to embrace.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's all of our experiences. We love when guests are honest. I think the one thing that we do really well is whether it's us or our team, we are always listening. We are always watching to what people are thinking or saying, and we are not going to be mad for anyone's critiques. Some critiques are definitely wrong, but others are not wrong. The overwhelming majority are, you know what, you're right, or I never thought about that, or you're totally valid. It was designed for this reason. And I think Bros and Outage specifically is a great example for that because it's our dark experience. And some people leave that game and they say, I can appreciate what was done. It wasn't for me. And I said, I totally respect that. I appreciate that viewpoint as well, that it was great for what it was, but I don't like a dark experience. Or I like seeing the scenery. Yeah.
Is it? So it's one of those games where you play in pitch black.
60 to 65% of the game is played in complete and total darkness, where you actually have a starting point that is a lit space, but you progress forward into it. But going back to Bros, like a great point that David made, it was like, I think our teams always know because after they do their briefing initial setup, they normally in the experience start referring to each member in the group as bro, like bro Chacho, bro Sif. Brosif.
We were doing that before the game master was finished delivering the story and
if
rules.
You can meet that at its surface. We already know that you're going to be the team. But some people will leave the game and so be like a game host, like a game master, and it's bro, you know, like you got to, if you don't allow yourself to at least acknowledge them as the bro, then I don't think you're maybe gaining as much from that experience.
This reminds me of that bit from Silicon Valley. Do you guys remember the bro app bit from Silicon Valley?
No.
I was working in tech when that show was popular, and I found it triggering.
It's so cringe-inducing. It is so difficult to watch sometimes. My sister just got Max, so I rewatched the whole thing, and there's just this whole bit where like Jared downloads this app called Bro, and all it does is it lets you send a bro to somebody else. And that's it. There's an entire episode where he's like, just like, bro. And it was an angry bro.
If I were to play Bros for Life again, what I would do is I would create a challenge mode for my team where you could only say the word bro. And you just communicate with different inflections, like the scene from The Wire. I don't know if if any of you have watched The Wire. So there's a classic scene in that where two detectives are investigating a really gruesome murder scene, and the only word that they use over the course of the entire investigation is fuck. Just saying it in different inflections. You understand exactly what they are saying. It is such an amazing scene. You can probably find it on YouTube. Highly recommend looking it up. But that is what I would do as a challenge mode for Bros for Life.
I feel like we have a new enthusiast mode to say.
Have you ever played those miniature golf courses where you're going and you can spin that thing, and if it lands the person after you can hit their golf club backwards or whatever?
I have not.
Okay, well, it's super popular in Orlando. But I wonder if that'd be something for an escape room where you could put like a swivel and it's like, hey, do you guys want to do the bonus options to play? And if you get it, it's like play Bros for Life, but you can't talk.
So surprise, this is now a design meeting and we're in process for our sixth game in Orlando. So
you would not be the first people to have turned a bonus show into a design meeting. When we run our Montreal tour, one of the games that we always include on it is Bernie Block from Escaparium, which I love that game so much. And what we do before sending teams in is I'll pull every team aside. And the first year, I just pulled everyone aside and I would say like, hey, just want to make sure you all understand. Any one of you can solo this very quickly. So just enjoy yourselves. And the second time we ran the tour, the first team I told that to, they asked me, could we play it silently? And I said, yeah, you could totally play it silently. And then every team after that heard that the first team had played silently, and so they all played it silently, and they all had a great time doing it. So I'm a big fan of, especially for enthusiasts, who are going to breeze through some of these games. Because like Bros for Life, I think also fits into this category of like, it's not a really hard game. It is a game that has a lot of personality, but I don't imagine there are a lot of enthusiast teams that are going through it and being like, oh gosh, we really needed another 20 minutes on this one.
I actually think, though, David, your original idea of only saying bro is actually funnier to execute than not talking at all.
Oh, I agree. I'm just talking about the different mode. I think bro is way funnier, but I don't think that there's a version of that for Bernie Block.
They can only say Bernie the whole time.
They can only say Block.
They can only say Bernie or Block the whole time.
Yeah. Talking about Bernie Block for a second, it's like when we went to Montreal with Tay and Josh, the night before we played that experience, we were at a bar and we originally didn't have it booked. But after a lot of drinks and conversation, I was like, guys, I'm going to book this. We're going to have so much fun. And all of them were like, okay, Derek, you're going to Uber and you're going to play that experience solo because we're not doing it. And it was all a joke, but it was so funny because we were all like, oh, we're going to go play Bernie Block. And I was like, guys, it'll be so immersive. It'll be so much fun. And we went in with that mentality of we need to just have fun in this experience and know that we're probably going to breeze through it if we just try to go at it. But like just enjoying the experience. And like that was one of the highlights of our trip was that experience, just like enjoying it. And it was the final thing we did before we left.
I'm deeply of the opinion that if you go to Escaparium and don't play Bernie Block, you did Escaparium wrong.
Yes, I would agree.
I agree.
I would second that.
Yeah. I also think that it is good for the emotional health of escape room owners after playing some of the other games there to go and play Birdie Block.
I admire that opinion even more.
Yeah, they were nice enough to give us a tour, and
Jonathan knew that we were coming, and he greeted us, and he was with us the entire day. And of course, their team was with us.
amazing.
It was just such a great experience. But like, you can tell that there's such an appreciation about every element that went into the creation of that location that it's even Birdie Block needs to shine.
Jealousy is real in this industry for owners.
I mean, if you're going to be jealous,
It's a real
that's a good company to be jealous of.
Yeah. And when people say they're jealous of us, or like, dude, you guys have no idea.
Get on YouTube and get in a retail space.
There's a enthusiast version of that, which is when people hear that Lisa and I have played 1,200 games. I'm always just like, oh, we're not even close to the most. You know, have you heard of Heiner or Sarah and Sharon? They're like way up over 2,000 or 3,000.
Yeah, when I tell people that we played 400, they're like, what? That's so many. And I'm like,
No, you have no.
Yeah, challenge modes are fun though. I'm a big fan. I think bro mode is viable.
Yeah, I think so too. It's something we'll talk with the team if we're not building something new. You know what? We're always building something new.
I remember we had a similar type of discussion in the Patreon Discord a while back, and I think this was actually brainstorming around what to use to replace leaderboards, because I think the discussion was like, leaderboards are on the way out, and having them basically encourages your players to play for speed and time and not for enjoying the story, right? So, okay, we're getting rid of leaderboards, but companies wanted to replace them with something else to have in the lobby. And so I think it was Byron Delmonico from Riddle Room said that he replaced his leaderboard with a most creative team photo board instead. Oh, and I think you like won a free game, right? If you won like most creative team photo of the month or silliest team photo of the month. And he said it ended up being really successful, actually. People were really excited and they would post it online and all those things. And so I think that giving your players another opportunity to be creative, apart from just playing the game, actually gets them more invested in your business and your game.
Yeah. And those are photos inside of the experience, right?
Or like the team photo that you take at the end.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that's a great that's like a great thing to pull like inspiration from right now, because I think we just redesigned and reproduced our Port Charlotte lobby into the Orlando location and now Winter Garden, that we now have an opportunity of, I don't want to put leaderboards in our lobby. It's not something that we notate or like present to our guests, that it's like, what else? What's the next best thing? And I think creating something out of an experience that isn't making it just for the time adds an extra level would be really cool.
I'm excited for the 6th game in Orlando coming, because with the theme that we're going with and the start of it, I'm curious what direction we're going to take as it gets to open, because it has a lot of potential, and I'm sure there's ways that we can work that into it. But not to spoil, nothing's set in stone yet, so we'd hate to give something and then it's on this and we're like, oh, that's completely wrong.
We'd like to take a moment to thank our sponsors, Morty, Buzzshot, and Cogs by Clockwork Dog. Your support is what makes this podcast possible. I used to wish every day for an app that does exactly what Morty does. It lets me track all of the escape rooms I've played, and I also use it to find games around me, including game reviews and open time slots. It even has discount codes. So if you're an escape room owner and you want to get your games on there, they have a partnership program for you. And if you're already using Morty and you love all that it has to offer, you can support your favorite app by becoming a member today.
I believe in Morty so much that I have a stake in it as an advisor, and I always enjoy the time that I get to spend giving the Morty team my input and suggestions. Start discovering and tracking your immersive outings today. You can learn more at morty.app/REPOD. That's REPOD to sign up and get a special badge for our listeners. We'd also like to thank longtime sponsor Buzzshot. Buzzshot is escape room software powering business growth, player marketing, and improving the customer experience. They offer an assortment of pre- and post-game features, including robust waiver management, branded team photos, and streamlined review management.
Streamline your marketing and grow your escape room business. REPOD listeners get an extended free trial and 20% off your first 3 months with no setup fees or hidden charges. Visit buzzshot.com/REPOD. That's REPOD to learn more. We'd also like to thank sponsor Cogs. Are you looking to up your game when it comes to creating a more theatrical experience for your escape room or immersive show? Cogs by Clockwork Dog is a software-hardware platform that makes it easy to create a show with lighting and sound cues, whether you're totally new to escape room tech or a seasoned engineer.
Get the COG starter set for only $130 plus free shipping to the USA. This bundle is usually valued at $257. You can learn more and purchase your starter set at cogs.show. Use code REPOD at checkout. That's REPOD.
Our heartfelt thanks to sponsors Morty, Buzzshot, and Cogs by Clockwork Dog. This show would not be possible without their support. You can find links and details in the show notes. Supporting our sponsors supports this podcast. So in the main episode, you kind of mentioned in passing, I think I was asking you about redoing Scapegoat, and you'd mentioned that puzzle flow is really important to you, and you made some adjustments to the game to improve puzzle flow. And I didn't really press you on it then, but I'm kind of curious, what does good puzzle flow mean to you?
That's a great question. For me, when it comes to designing, I would say that a strong puzzle flow relies on a pacing of a story that also is guided by tasks, by puzzles. So my kind of idea of that is that your team is always at a point that doesn't push the line of like chaotic puzzle solving, and that there's always an element that ties at least the story together or allows everyone in the team to have a hand in understanding what's happening. It kind of comes down to, we always have like a 2 or maybe a 3 starting point in an experience to kind of give you an opportunity to pick and choose where you feel best and how the kind of dynamic is. And it kind of builds from that. So seeing things on paper and being able to understand that, what does this task give? And then what is the result of that? And how can that kind of be offset by something else happening at the same time? So it kind of depends on a lot of different factors about the story, the kind of engagement, what character we're asking our teams to take on. But essentially, it's making sure that everything's in line with each other and making sure that it never crosses the line of chaos, whether having too many locks accessible, too many rooms accessible. That would be a big thing as well. And making sure that the teams are progressively working through a space. And my goal is to always make sure, to the best of our ability. I think some of our bigger games like Arctic kind of fall out of that, but always at least having the team come together to complete one objective, one puzzle in order to progress into a new space. Because we always want to make sure everyone's experiencing a more substantial moment in a puzzle solve together.
I cannot emphasize enough the importance of gating puzzles properly.
Yes, yes.
I mean, and look, this isn't necessarily fair because it was a beta test, but I did recently beta test a game where I think almost every single puzzle from beginning to end, it was just all available to us at the very beginning.
Yeah.
And actually, like, my team ended up having fun kind of unraveling it, but that's because we're like a power hungry team that's always looking for stuff to do. So, you know, we had fun and we still went way over the time, but I was like, there's no way, like, there needs to be a better progression.
Yeah, we get it. I mean, and that's the hard part with the Scapegoat acquisition was like, we also have to be careful because budget is very important with an acquisition, because at the end of the day, we are going to be changing out all these experiences over the next year or 2 years. We can't invest too much time and money into this specific game because we have this game being built that's new, this game being built that's new, and this will be a new game over the next year or so. So we have to be careful But, and once again, give it to those guys. I mean, they didn't do anything bad. We have our different flavors that we enjoy.
It's your style.
Yeah, our style.
Sure.
Also, those games are not new at this point.
No. And that was a conversation as well, because sitting down with Don and being able to kind of discuss a couple things, it was like very important to me to know, because we were going to do a big change to one game that we were like, this will be here the longest. And ultimately, I kind of talked CJ off the ledge in it, because I was like, Don, how old is this game? And she was like, it's going on 8 years now. And I was like, CJ, it's kind of lived. I think what's great about the Escape Ventures, it will bring some different clientele that maybe haven't gotten to experience a scapegoat yet from the kind of Escape Ventures.
It's a cult.
I'm not going to say cult. We have, I think what's great is we have been able to create enthusiasts that don't necessarily know of the escape room potential and like how many awesome venues are there around, like locally even, that like some people are Escape Ventures only. And we appreciate that, but there's so much to go out and play. So even discussing like that.
That is an interesting thing, because I've heard about this phenomenon where there are players who really love a particular company and they decide that they are like brand loyal. I'm not going to go play anywhere else. And this is something I hadn't heard a lot of, but
and I discourage it. We highly discourage it, because we do one thing, and we'll kind of do different new things with each new product. But at the end of the day, we don't do everything the best. We may do this one thing the best. This other company does this the best.
And also, they can only play it once.
Exactly. Once you play our games, we have 5 games at one location, 4 games at one location.
I mean, listen, I love it in the beginning when I open a new game and we sell out.
We will always appreciate it. We will always appreciate it.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, we encourage so much to go out and try other venues. And that is such a great thing about the limited collaboration, unfortunately, that there is in Orlando. We would love to have it a lot more collaborative. We have our team. We strongly encourage, go out and play this venue, because if our team likes an experience, they're going to push people out to do it. And for us, in a way, as a business owner, I encourage that for our Florida markets, to understand that once they play your game, they're going to be done, right? But if you're constantly creating new things, very much like we are, it's so important to have people continuously out and playing, because if they're not, they may not know that you have a new experience, because word's not traveling. They're not staying involved in the industry. If we keep up a collaborative communication across locations, if a game host at one location got to beta test a new experience or something, and we have a team that's now played all of our games waiting on a new thing, but isn't in tune with social media or email, they may run into that game host, and the game host is like, yeah, Escape Ventures is coming out with a new game. So much opportunity beyond just creating an escape room enthusiast, but also like financially beneficial, business minded. You got to keep up the market.
The first trip we took, probably the first 2 trips we took, we were kind of like generally feeling really let down by the region. And then we were really caught off guard. When we went down to Orlando, we weren't planning to run a tour. We were just like, there's a whole bunch of companies people have told us we need to see. It's Orlando. We'll see if it's all right. And every time we went to visit yet another company, we were just sort of like, okay, this is a different vibe. There's something different going on here. It feels different. The owners that we're encountering, like, they're more engaged than in the past.
So, David, any takes on the a regional flavor of the Orlando area?
In my opinion, there's a handful of companies that I think are a noticeable cut above everyone else. And so what I'll say is the thing that kind of ties those companies together, my 3 favorites in the region being you guys, Exit Games, and Doldrix, all 3 have a sincerity and levity that is not prolific. That kind of blend, that there's a humor to everything, even when taking things seriously. Also, really, really good names. Like, game titles amongst these companies, each has a different style, but like stellar game titles.
I was just thinking about that because when we were recording the main episode and you were talking about some of the game titles, and I was like, who else has good titles? I was like, Doldrix. And I was like, that's another Orlando company.
But also Servants of Slight and Pins and Needles. Like, these are good names. These are top tier names. And I think that the levity is not common. I think it's becoming more common. It might be because we are both in reviews and on the podcast constantly bringing this up, just constantly bringing it up, I think that it goes a long way.
I mean, we're still kind of shocked. We're one of the only Orlando venues that does actors in their experiences. I mean, we're in Orlando. I mean, there's so much talent out there working with our team and everything. Even playing Doldrix games, like they still have the timers in the rooms. And so do a lot of super popular venues. And for us, that's never been in our model. It's so interesting that we're still one of the only venues in Orlando that doesn't really focus on the timer aspect.
Mm-hmm. Which I think is wise.
If you don't have a timer in the room, are you kind of like, you want every team to go through? And so do you just like, kind of nudge them along so that you make sure every team finishes with?
Well, that's a great question.
Welcome to the TEV debate between the whole team.
Yes.
Failing groups used to be illegal in our company. We said, no, you make it work. You do it. It's inevitable.
Some teams are really committed to sucking.
Really committed to I've never done an escape room before and I want 0 nudges and I'm going to be the best one here. And we're like,
piss in all the jars.
I would say about 98% of all groups who play our experiences do pass. We have different difficulty modes that we put the games onto, especially for our newer players. We can tell you're a new player and we will make that the easiest version of the experience for you to play.
And I think one of the beautiful things about where we've kind of come is there is a certain element of a show that is being ran on a technical side that if there's some puzzles in the experience that we want you to experience, they're there for you. However, if you're falling behind, you may not even know that this puzzle exists. So being able to pass up on additional elements within the game to make sure that you're still getting your full 60-minute, 90-minute experience, but you're also going to be able to complete your storyline, right? Because at the end of the day, it may not be completing the full experience for what was written on paper, but you're still going to get the characters, you're still going to get the story, and you're still going to be solving things for that entire duration as best as we can and we can offer.
So do you just like bypass puzzles, or what? Do you have like tricks to push players through?
Yes, both. Absolutely. For Neighborhood specifically, there's an access point in the game. So they will, depending on the pacing, they will add or remove things from that experience where they do have to enter the game. And then we also have our overrides in the office for each experience. Think to our general manager and CJ as well, but making sure that if tech doesn't work, we have an opportunity to override if it's solved to make sure that the teams never get held up on a tech issue. We always want to make sure that's another element of flow that's always there, but also knowing that if there's an opportunity to bypass a puzzle, then it will just get skipped over.
Yeah, it's hard because Neighborhood Watcher, our whole team wants us to make it a 75-minute game. They don't think it's a 60-minute game, but then you go and it's once again, enthusiasts are a whole different monster. They escaped that game with 30 minutes left, 20 minutes left. Even in our Phantom Files game in Port Charlotte, it's probably one of the easiest 90-minute games we'd ever designed. But oh my goodness, the amount of people who spend 2 hours in that game, astronomical.
But even more so with Phantom, it isn't easier gameplay, but the story is still there if you let it be. There are numerous characters that you're going to interact with that you're going to have to solve for. There's also actor integration of moments that you're interacting and getting to see them, touch base with them. And if you can just enjoy that experience and allow yourself to be in the moment and solve as a team and see everything, you're still going to get that 90-minute experience that's designed for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that's why I enjoy building and designing bigger experiences now. People do like bigger games. Bigger is better. It's the age time saying, I'm sorry. It's hard. Total sidetrack, Weeping Witch, beautiful, perfect. Love the use of space.
It's a phenomenal game.
Oh my gosh, so good. But
absolute masterpiece.
I will say that our bigger experiences, Arctic, Phantom Files, Nightfall, the customer satisfaction through the roof. Like, just because the main thing they say, there's so many rooms.
There's a lot of truth in what you're saying. A couple of thoughts. First is just like, I can see Neighborhood Watcher taking non-enthusiasts quite a bit more time. I still don't think it's more than a 60-minute game. I don't think that if you stretch out the game clock, the expectations are going to be much larger than what that game will be able to deliver, I think.
Yes. And it being on the smaller side, that's another thing, is when you see a higher time duration, sometimes the expectation is it will be bigger.
To me, that feels like a really cool, almost art house game that without it being completely rethought out, I wouldn't want to be paying a premium price for a 90-minute version that is more or less that.
Yep. Yes. And I think that also takes into consideration, like, one of my favorite things to do with any experience is, as much as I want to say, give me like a 1,400 square foot space and let me go balls to the wall. The great example with Neighborhood Watcher is I took rooms away from that experience. It was our biggest game originally in Orlando, and now it's our second smallest. So the crazy thing that I always love to do is how can we utilize the space to make it feel so expansive and still get multiple rooms out of it? And I would say when you get to experience Click and Glitch, seeing that room before walls went up, completely different than now having the experience that we have. And just sometimes the angle of a wall placement is super important. Sometimes the height of a wall is important. Sometimes the color choice on a wall is important. That all these kind of design elements come to play that outside of designing for an escape room, scenically, that is something that I really enjoy. That sometimes just considering how a space is used is equally as important to utilizing and making the most out of that experience.
I very much agree with that. The second thought that has popped into my head just hearing about what you guys are thinking about, and I know there are other folks in our community who will be listening who are thinking about this, is that building longer games. I really believe that if you are building anything exceeding 90 minutes, but even probably generally including 90-minute games, you need to be thinking through your pipelining on this. I think you need to be figuring out how you can get more throughput through that game. In my opinion, for a 90-minute game, trying to get a new team in every 45 minutes is something that I would be strongly encouraging. And for games that exceed that, once you start talking 2-3 hour games, I really think that getting a new team in every 30 to 45 minutes is something that if you aren't baking it into your designs immediately, you're never going to get there. And the player experience on long games go up through the roof, at least when they're well built. When they're not well built, then it's just like, why are we here? The cost of that time is so exorbitant if you are not building your throughput model to handle it. And it's hard. It's really hard. But I really believe that making too many games that exceed 90 minutes without pipelining or some other interesting throughput model is long-term really cutting the opportunity that you have to make money with the space, especially during those prime slots on Fridays and Saturdays.
Yep. I think you would take the lead on this, but we've always had that discussion with a 90-minute experience and anything that exceeds that, but 90 has always been our kind of 60 or 90.
I love to do the math for it. So I'm always looking at, I think this is where Derek and I then take a huge segue, is I'm always on the back end, like looking at the profit analysis and what is our profit margin versus a 60-minute versus a 90. For us, we have found 90-minute profit margins are higher than our 60-minute profit margins.
Fantastic.
But it's that 3-person minimum ticket price. That's where it gets to that without adding that even if you start every 60 minutes for a 90-minute game. So we don't have to necessarily push someone. We do just fine with it. One of our clients has an experience like that, and it does make them the most money, 100%. We actually just ran through numbers a few days ago, and he's doing excellent with it, and he wants us to help redesign it and restructure it better, but it is a very good model. It's a 2-hour experience. So giving a breakdown of a 90-minute experience or even a 2-hour experience, and you are able to break it down between I think they start theirs every 60 minutes for their 2-hour experience. The numbers are awesome, really good. And with that minimum ticket price, it's unfortunate the way the industry's going. As an escape room owner, I do think escape rooms are expensive, and I get that 100% sometimes. And that's why we always try to pump our experiences with the actor, the extra immersion, everything else with it. But we started adding smells to our games, and people really like it now. Our costs to build escape rooms have gone up probably 3 times as much in the past 5 years as well. I mean, so it's super, super difficult. And I feel bad for new owners who are just getting into it and had this expectation of they were going to claim the top spot and they were going to be the place to go. It's so hard to do that now. It is so extremely difficult to do it.
Some of that depends on where you are. It is extraordinarily difficult to do in Orlando at this point, which I could make a case that Orlando is the US's top market right now. It's certainly up there. The game quality is really high, at least if you are selective with who you visit. I would not envy someone opening up in Orlando. But you do have there's one advantage, which I'm curious to hear your take on this, but I live in New Jersey where if you go a little bit further south than where I am, almost everybody, their first job was working at Six Flags Great Adventure. My read on talking to almost anyone in Orlando is that a lot of people are getting their first jobs at Disney or Universal, a very large amount, which means that you kind of have this remarkably well-trained workforce from a customer service and entertainment standpoint. That is a valuable asset that not every region has.
Yeah, if you would have seen us trying to hire in Port Charlotte, Florida, you would have seen a lot of stress. It was extremely, and our team, awesome now, love them. But it was very difficult to hire in Port Charlotte. And kind of what we expected in Orlando, it was a little different in Port Charlotte. So it was a huge hurdle that we had to adjust to. Yes, I do agree with you that Orlando is definitely a top market. I mean, we've played hundreds of games here now, and a venue closes, another one opens, a venue closes, another one opens. It's a consistent theme in Orlando. But when I compare our recent LA trip, I still think that most of the LA games we played were better than most of what we've experienced in Orlando. Overall, there's still some, the consistency.
You're not capable of factoring your own games into that experience.
I mean, no, I compare our games to everyone. I can't help it. I don't know. I think it's a viewpoint of consistency across the board, because between two trips, I played over 50 escape rooms in the LA region. That is just consistently across the board. There hasn't been a bad game or anything that's really below they should have done this. Or
here is my case for Orlando. And I'll make the case for LA as well. The case for LA is that there are a ton of amazing games in a relatively small amount of space. Emphasis on relatively. Almost every company you visit, with a few exceptions, you're going to that company for one game. Crossroads and the Hatch building notwithstanding, almost every other company that's worth going to, you're going for one, maybe two games, frequently one. You are spending so much time, so much logistics, just getting yourself around those games. The case for Orlando, you can go to 3, maybe 4 companies, step through the door of just a handful of buildings, not have to drive yourself around all over the place. Half of those companies are within 20 minutes of each other.
That's
and it is not as hard to go and play a ton of games, which is why we're able to run a really good tour to Orlando, and we plan to run it again because logistically it's manageable. LA is a logistics nightmare. You have to be much more committed as an enthusiast to come in from out of town and hit all of the places that you're supposed to hit. And then even when you do that, you will still, over the course of your trip, have a number of game masters ask you, hey, have you played this from this? And you're like, I didn't even know that was a thing. I'm like, oh yeah, it just opened. And you're just going to be you're going to get 4 of those. And then you go home being oh, I just finished this trip and I didn't even play all the games everyone's talking about now.
There's so many so
That's the LA experience.
Yes.
That's great. And I love, we go to LA at least once a year at this point, partially because we have to. But that is a very different experience as a tourist, and it is much more work. It is a much more exhausting trip.
That's fair.
Yeah. I mean, we just got back and it
was a tiring trip. It was a lot of driving.
But I will say that's a very valid point. I mean,
you're welcome and sorry.
There definitely are locations that we've been to. I mean, we still haven't done some of the top rated in LA because it's been we got to save it for this person. We got to save it for this person. Mm-hmm. But across the board, it's a lot of, you're going to play one experience and then you get that experience. Then you're okay, I'm going to hop in the car and I have an hour drive until the next one. I mean, that was literally our first 3 days.
And your hour drive may be a 2-hour drive.
Oh, yes. And there's the Orlando traffic that everyone talks about, but it really is oh, that you're going to that venue? That's all the way across Orlando. And at the end of the day, like it caps at like maybe like 45 minutes.
When we were wrapping the main episode, Derek, you lifted your mug and there is a cartoon Bucky's. And I thought it was like the cartoon from that Amazon show, The Boys, but it's not. It's from Bucky's.
It's Bucky's.
And I had no idea what Bucky's was. And you guys all lost your minds. So what the heck is Bucky's?
It's a cult. Well, it's another cult that we need to mention because Bucky's is literally like any time that we're traveling outside of Florida, you can go west, you can go north, and you're going to hit a Bucky's. And they started in Texas, but it's essentially like a gas station on steroids because you get fresh jerky. They make everything's branded inside. They have memorabilia, they have onesies, they have fresh jerky. They have a whole bakery section. They make pulled pork brisket like in-house and they're cutting it and you have like everyone is like fresh on the board. It's just a vibe. Like you go in, you got to get beaver nuggets. You have to watch a YouTube video because there's beaver nuggets. And
that sounds like a porn title.
They're not what you think that they are in the first sense of what they could be as a food. They're very sweet. They almost are like, they're like almost caramelly, but I don't know how to describe it. I can't even describe Bucky's because you got to experience.
There's a lot of people and they're all like him.
Yeah.
So
they're all crazy.
I'm sold because my favorite things are those gigantic truck stops like Love's, you know, when you're traveling and there's souvenirs and there's all kinds of foods and I love them.
It's a fancy Walmart meets like a racetrack, I want to say, or like a Wawa. Yes.
What the heck is a Wawa?
Oh,
what's Wawa?
Wawa is another convenience store gas station thing.
Yes.
We have them in Jersey. Next time you're in town, PG, I will take
great
you to a Wawa.
smoothies.
They have
food.
It's like the
They got
gas
good food.
station. It's the gas station that blew up for making like really quality food. So like they have burgers now, pizza.
Yeah, basically all of these places have figured out that the secret to making it as a convenience store gas station is not sucking.
Yeah. And making it in an immersive experience.
Oh my gosh, if only escape rooms took notes sometimes.
I'm honestly shocked that LA does not have better gas station convenience stores. You'd think with how much people are driving here, you know, it's all car culture and we got crappy convenience stores.
Well, it's crazy because if you look at the gas station business, they don't make much money on the gas sales. The stations themselves don't really make any money off of the sale of gas. They make teeny tiny bits. It's everyone else down the supply chain is making all of the money on gas. Gas stations, if they're making money, are making it off of concessions or
like a movie
repairs.
theater.
Yeah.
That is what Bucky's and Wawa in particular have been cracking into for decades and slowly expanding their empires until one day there will be some like Shakespearean battle between the two of them somewhere in the middle of the country.
And they also have the cleanest bathrooms. And when you pull up, I think they have over 100 pumps. I think that's their thing too.
Okay, you know what?
Wawa doesn't have like 100 pumps.
No, Wawa does not.
But they do have clean bathrooms.
We are the Bucky's fan club now. I'm on board.
There we go. We're going.
We'll go. PG on your next trip down to Orlando.
They are quickly expanding. They just go to like prime locations off of a highway and it's taking over the world. You'll have one of these cups soon enough.
You heard it here, folks. Curtis and Derek, thank you so much for joining us. This has been so much fun talking and chatting with you. I'm just so inspired by your passion and enthusiasm and your insane drive and how prolific you are. So this has just been a blast.
Thank you guys so much. It's been seriously so much fun getting to officially chat with you guys and sit down and talk escape rooms. But thank you so much for having us.
The crazy thing, just to close this out, the craziest part of this is that I only met you for the first time more or less in passing at Recon.
Yes.
Like we spoke for like 2 minutes.
I know.
And this interview is the first time that we've actually had a chance to really have a conversation because when we were running the Orlando tour, Lisa was at your location both days that we were there.
Yes.
And I never got a chance to, I feel like I've just known you through your games and through reputation for ages. But I have to say, you live up to your reputations, which are lovely.
That's very kind. But seriously, it was such a pleasure, guys.
Likewise.
Thanks for joining us, and thank you so much to all of our patrons for supporting this bonus content. None of this would exist without your support. Thanks so much, and we'll see you in the next episode.